Vertical Pursuit, the podcast, webcast, Mike Barrett, Mike Tatlock. Welcome in, and thanks for joining us, and thanks for all your continued comments and your support, and for continuing to listen. We hope it's doing something for you, entertaining you, to be sure, but also maybe helping you live a little bit better life. And since we last did an episode, we both shot an elk, which was awesome. We might have to weave that into the story at some point.
We got to weave that in.
I know we would.
There's no way we can not talk about that epic night.
Yeah, we had an epic night. Or we'll
it'll weave in. There'll be a parable in there somewhere.
Yeah, that'll have to come up naturally. I was thinking about earlier, how are we going to weave in the hunting story? I thought, well, it'll happen. It always does. But you know, the one thing that I was thinking about, which does relate to this, we have a very good friend who allows us to hunt on private land, and never lets us compensate or do anything back. Yeah. And I always feel bad. Mm-hmm. And when I'm driving home, I'm usually feeling bad. Yeah. And then even today, I had somebody gift me with something. It was some work at my house, and I was all ready for it. It was going to be a significant repair. And I'm like, and then they're like, nope, we got it because you've done a bunch of stuff for us. And I'm still feeling bad about that. And then, you know, and this does kind of relate to what we're going to talk about, and it has a lot of different twists and turns, this topic, and I'll get to some of those too. But the first thing is to admit that I am a extremely poor receiver, and it frustrates me that I am that way, because it frustrates me when others are poor receivers. Yeah. When they don't want to accept things that you give them. Yeah. And it is accept. So acceptance and receivership are two big things. And biblically speaking, it's also huge. And we're also, I always look at this, and I look at this like with worry too, we talked about. We're kind of commanded to be good receivers. And if you're not a good receiver, then it leads to this question of worth. Yeah. And then it gets in the way of worth. And so I don't know. I relate it to, compliment. A compliment, you know, hey, it's a great looking shirt. Where'd you get that? It's nothing. And so years ago, Christmas Eve service, when I was still doing the NBA broadcasts, you guys would have me read a story. Yeah. And then I'd always try to have a little bit of a teaching in there. And what I basically said at one of them was that I talked of the whole... The thing we tell our kids is it's better to give than receive, and no, it's easier to give than to receive. And so you can talk about this as it relates to people's worth, but I think the biggest thing is to both, for me, to surely admit, and then in my marriage, we're both givers, we're both pleasers, my wife and I, and so we're both trying to give to each other, and both aren't good receivers. Yeah. And it's not like we have a lot of conflict, but that is something at times that I'm like, geez, just receive it. And she says the same thing to me. But what do you, on this whole issue, because you, as a pastor and an NBA team chaplain, you are at times, people will give you things, give you gifts. You seem to be a pretty good receiver, because when I've given you things in the past or whatever, you don't try to talk me out of it, which is what I always do to people. Right. So how do you get a healthy state of mind when it comes to being a good receiver? And then we'll get to what that really means down the road.
Well, first of all, before we go down that road, because I know you so well, and it's funny, like we've talked about this, how hard it is to receive a compliment, receive generosity, receive somebody has a gift for you. You're like, why do I don't feel worthy to receive that. Yeah. What's funny is you say it's hard for you to receive, which I know it is, yet you're probably one of the most absolute biggest givers that I know. Yeah, Isn't that crazy? It's like the opposite of that.
But I'll let you keep going. But
but it's true.
Yeah, no.
You can't receive the compliment.
But I think that's that is true.
It's happening right now.
But I'm saying it as an admission, because I think that's kind of selfish. Because a lot of times the giving of it, that's more for me. Yeah. I worry about that. I'm not saying that, but I think about that sometimes. And I think maybe that's more for me. It isn't, because I love to bless people. I love that. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, but it's true, because and what's so great, I always know a really good gift giver is because of how intentional or specific they know the person received. Like, oftentimes people will give gifts because they'll be like, I know I'd love to get this gift. Like, I would love this gift, so therefore I'm going to give that exact gift to somebody else. But when someone who's like, they're given a gift and it's so specific because they know the person, like one of the things, like people know this that they listen on the podcast. Like my wife has some health issues, and in our friendship, you guys have been you and Shelly have been so kind and gracious. You invite us over. We're at your guys' house for dinner the other night, and you're sending me texts, and you've brought over barbecue to our house just because you're like, hey, I bet she's had a hard, long day or just tired. And so how can I bless you guys? I'm cooking some stuff on the grill. And I think this, you're like so fine tuned to, her dietary restrictions. You just want to be a blessing. You're not saying, oh, I think she should have this because I would enjoy it.
Yeah.
You're going, I know that she has some restrictions. So how can this really bless her where she's at? That's a good gift giver, is they're thoughtful of what the person they're receiving it. And that's you. That's why I say, I think you go beyond just giving gifts. You actually know the bullseye to bless the other person. But so something happened to me years ago, because I have had to learn the same thing to receive, but because it is hard. And I think I've learned to acknowledge it on the surface and then walk away having that battle inside my mind. So here it goes back. Bern and I, we were young and we were married college students, dirt poor, like we had nothing. And I remember a guy who was a coach, a sports coach, that somehow we got connected. And he showed up at my house and he's like, hey, I have some money for you. And I remember like, no, I don't want your money. He's like, no, I know, no, you guys are like married students and I know you need some stuff. And I prayed about it and God just told me I'm supposed to come. It's like maybe $50. And back then it might as well have been $5,000, right? For us. He showed up at the house and I kept saying no. I kept refusing to receive it. And to be honest, it was pride. For me. Yeah. Because I'm like, no, man, I got this. Like, I'm man of the house, man. I provide for my wife.
Nobody takes care of me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly how, I was taking that. And I kept saying, no, no, no. And then he looked at me and he goes, this is what he said. He goes, don't rob me of the joy of giving. And I was like, oh, man. So receiving, it's something for both of us in that exchange. In that moment of exchange where one person's giving somebody else, whether it's a compliment, a gift, their time, there is two things going on. There's me learning to receive and letting my pride go down, getting my ego out of the way, but then also not robbing that person of the joy they get for giving. And so it's like mutual. I had to learn that lesson. So now every once in a while someone will come and be generous and say, hey, here's something for you. And I've had to learn that how I do that, I got to be really careful I don't rob that person. If I kind of take it begrudgingly or I downplay it, sometimes it's like, oh, yeah, thanks, appreciate it, and kind of just walk away. When it's like taking the intentional time to acknowledge that their gift may have come from sacrifice, their gift may have come from, really praying and hearing from the Lord, so they're stepping out in obedience. And so I don't want to minimize what's happening in their heart and mind to the point where they're giving, because something's happening on both ends. That's something I've been processing for a while.
And it does, and it makes people uncomfortable to receive.
Totally.
And I think it also, and this may be a stretch, but I think it also requires intimacy to receive.
Good. Yeah.
And people don't want to go there, especially guys. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to I was out at a friend's house, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and there was somebody there working on his garage. And this guy started talking about this podcast. And he said to the other guy, hey, Mike, he said, you got to listen to this podcast. He said, and Mike said, I heard, just kind of mumbled it. He goes, I'm not worthy of listening to anything like that. He goes, that's not for me. I couldn't.
Yeah.
And I said, what? And then he said the same thing. He goes, no, man. And then I had somebody else tell me the same thing. Another guy, another friend, the other night was texting with me, and I said something about, I think it was on the podcast. Might have been on church or something. And then he said the same thing. He said, that's great for you guys. He goes, but I don't belong in that conversation. I'm not the kind of guy who's even worthy of that, and that's not for me because and I said, man, and that's where it brings in this whole thing about worth.
Yeah.
So how come more for guys, I think, they get stuck on this worth. And I think today it's probably a bigger issue than it's been, especially with men, because they're just so beaten down.
Oh, totally.
And so they feel unworthy.
Yeah.
Therefore, they hide it by never giving into any kind of intimacy, especially with friends.
Yeah.
As far as being known,
right.
You've talked about the greatest fear, which I think it is, of men is being known and being rejected.
Totally.
Therefore, I'm just not going to be known by anybody.
Exactly.
And I think when it comes to being a receiver of even something like a podcast, well, I'm just not going to even dip into that, because then I've got to start thinking about it, and then I've got to start being honest with myself.
Yeah.
And I think some guys, and these are the guys that are tough, the ones that are right there, where they're a supporter of it.
Yeah.
And they believe to an extent, but not too much, because that requires something of me.
Totally. Well, and I think like the 2 or 3 negatives that come to my mind, and we really need to hone in on the worth piece, because I think that's a bigger conversation in this podcast. But, think about this. Some of the other reasons we don't receive, one, like I said, it's ego, it's pride. I don't want anybody to know that I need them, or I'm dependent. I'm like, and that's why I think some of the masculinity that we deal with, there's masculinity that's attacked in our culture right now. Men are beat down. You're a villain if you're a man, and if you want to express your masculinity, it's automatically toxic and all those sort of things. There are some unhealthy parts of masculinity that we need to look at. And one of those is this idea of like, I don't need anybody, right? And so if you're going to give me something and I have to admit that I need it, that ego gets in the way. I think sometimes we don't receive gifts or compliments other than the worth issue is because of a lack of trust, right? It's I'm getting played. Like this is like a bait and switch. Somebody's giving me something here, and they're schmoozing me. They're trying to, they're playing me, and so I don't know. I mean, I see this all the time with NBA players, and you saw this too. Was people are always like fawning over them and stuff, and they're kind of like, yeah, but I think you just want something from me.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I can trust, and if I receive it, or even taking another step. Man, if I receive something, I'm now in debt to you, and there's a sense of like, well, I owe them now, and those are all complications around receiving. But on the worst side, I think deep down inside, we all struggle with that sense of, man, I don't deserve, like you were talking about. I'm unworthy. I can't deserve any grace. I can't deserve any favor or compliment, or somebody's seen something good in me when only I'm going to see the bad in me. And so we tear ourselves down. We keep score. And most of us are looking at our scorecard, and we got a long list. And we do that with God, though.
Yeah.
And I think if we do that with God, we're definitely going to do it with other people. It brings me back to, as a pastor, I've had people walk in on Sunday, no joke, men and women walk in on Sunday. They were invited to come to church. They've never been to church before. And I've literally had people kind of walk in with their head down, guarded. And I'm like, man, their whole body language, like, why are they just look uncomfortable. And as I talk to them, they will literally tell me, I thought by coming to church today, I was going to get struck by lightning, or something bad was going to happen. So it's sort of like a vampire, with like the sun comes up and the skin is starting to melt. And we were watching a Simpsons episode the other day. You brought it and told me
when
about
Homer
that.
saves his kids from being baptized by Ned Flanders, and the water hits Homer and it sizzles on his skin.
Totally.
It is kind of funny.
But there's so many people who approach God that way. Like, man, if I get close to God, if I come to church, my skin's going to boil and I'm going to get hit by lightning because I'm so unworthy to come into his presence. Yeah. I'm so unworthy to be around other Christians. And I think that goes to that core issue of worth.
And I think for some people too, and I know the people you're talking about, they get invited to church, and I'll see them come in or whatever. And it isn't always just church, but it's like, to them, it seems like it's like a whole can of worms. Yeah. And I've avoided that. I've sat it in the corner and I haven't looked at it, and I've hoped it would just go away. But if I get in there and start stirring this up, I don't know what's going to come out. Therefore, I don't feel comfortable with this. But I do think, do they all wrap in though when you talk about pride? Because pride, I think sometimes you get a pass for saying I'm prideful. Everybody goes, oh, okay, well, you're proud. You're a proud guy.
Right.
Because they don't understand the negative connotation of pride.
Right.
But pride isn't a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, in the way we're using it now.
Yeah.
Being proud of your son, yes.
Yeah.
That's where I used to get stuck with it. When people talk about pride, and then they say false pride. I say, okay, I get that a little more. But it seems like the insecurity and the pride and the lack of intimacy, the lack of even wanting to get to know yourself or be honest with yourself lends itself to you not being able to receive anything. And then it just affects every relationship you have.
Absolutely. Well, I think like I told you the story the other day, and it's a story I always come back to. My neighbor Bill. My neighbor Bill, when we were living in Canby, Oregon, and we moved in this neighborhood, Bill lived across the street. Only way I can describe Bill's this just massive, tough-looking dude, like the baddest-looking dude I've ever known in my life, personally. I mean, just inked-up tat, neck down, full-body tats. He's from Hawaii, and so he'd always say, "What's up, brother? What's up, brother? Brother Mike, what's up?" And he was part of the Hawaiian Mafia, which I always think if you're gonna be part of any mafia, the Hawaiian Mafia would probably be a cool mafia to be a part of. But he was actually that guy. I mean, he was the toughest guy. One day, somebody slashed our tires because that happens in Canby all the time. But I don't know. But somebody literally, he comes knocking on my door and he's like, "Brother Mike, I walked by, all your tires are flat. Somebody slashed your tires." And he goes, "Who do you think did it? I'll take care of him." And I was like, "Oh, he was gonna take care of him.
He'll go visit these people." Yeah.
So, and I always joke, it's good for a pastor to have a guy.
Yeah, you need a guy.
If I got a guy, But I'll never forget the day we drove home from church, and he's sitting across in his driveway, and he looks over at me. I'm walking in the house, and he's like, "Brother Mike," and it's not like, "Hey, Brother Mike, what's up?" I can tell something's hard. He says, "Come over." So I walk over. We're standing in his front yard, and he said, "My sister just died, and it was tragic, unexpected." And the baddest dude that I've ever seen, toughest looking dude, buries his head into my shoulder and just starts weeping and crying. He's grieving his sister. And so, I mean, you got to imagine the scene that's happening. I'm thinking, what are the neighbors thinking? And just talking with him. And then he says something I'll never forget. Man, this is haunting me. I said, "Hey, man, I would love for you to, you can always come to church. We got a great group of people that can help you heal through that. We have grief classes, and we love to help through all that stuff." And he goes, "I don't think someone like me could ever go to church."
Yeah.
And I said, "What do you mean by that?" And he goes, "Well, someone like me." And I know what he meant by that, because he was automatically keeping score. The things I've done, that someone like me would never be able to receive God's goodness, his grace, his favor, his forgiveness, all that. He wrote himself off. And he's always living like he's an exile, like he's an outcast, right? And I go, man, that broke my heart, because it's the opposite of the story of Jesus.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of that. Jesus says, "I've come to give you grace." And grace is, by definition, undeserved favor. It means hey, you didn't earn that. And that's where I think for a lot of us, we see God's favor as a currency. And so it's like, okay, if I want God's forgiveness and God's goodness in my life, I got to pay for that somehow. But then I look at my life and I go, my bank account says I'm in the deficit because I've done all these bad things. And so I have nothing good in my credit line that deserves God's good favor. God doesn't work on that economy, though. And we do it in human relationships. We do this where we keep track of things, and our worth can't be something that we earn with God. We can't do that, because none of us then would actually measure up to that. Right. There's no one on earth, as good as some think they are, when it comes to God. He's like, "Listen, none of you, if this is going to be a contractual thing that you're going to only receive from me when you can pay for it with your goodness," God's like, then nobody gets to. There was one person, his name was Jesus. He was the only one. So the whole message of the Bible and Jesus is that it's a worth that we don't have to earn. It's a worth that he attributes to us. And that's hard for us, though. I talk about this idea. It's called grace. And it's so simple. As you give someone a gift, like, no. It's like, that's it right there. They can't receive. Because what goes through their mind is, did I earn it? Do I deserve it? Mm-hmm. And that's where we get stuck. It's like what you're saying. It comes down to that worth piece.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that in our culture, and even just speaking of the way most of us view the economy or our society, most guys who aren't maybe going to church or haven't accepted or received or believed, and again, this podcast is for anybody. We don't try to judge anybody. But I think the biggest reason a lot of them don't step into it is because it doesn't make sense to them.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And then you see other religions, not necessarily religions, other wings of Christianity where it is then about levels and works that get you places. But you've shown me, and when I've read, I'm not sure how they're getting that out of what has been written.
Right.
Because it just doesn't, it just says over and over again, the work has been done.
It's been done.
You're worthy. Yeah. And then and I would tell people this now, and even the guys I talked about who don't feel like they receive it, you're dishonoring then the ultimate giver of your life and your creator.
Yeah.
How do you, and it's easy for me to sit here and try to explain that, or I've tried to explain it to guys who have talked about that. What is the easiest way, and you kind of already did it, but what's the easiest way to kind of make that make sense to men of today?
Yeah.
That whole weird give and exchange program where it's not what you think. It's not, and you talked about keeping score. So many guys do that, and I think it keeps them from this ultimate life and receiving that ultimate life from the ultimate giver, your Heavenly Father.
Yeah. So the thing I would say is the difference between deserved favor and attributed favor. Okay, I'll explain it this way. Like if I go to your garage right now, I love your garage. Your garage is sick. I love it. I mean,
yours isn't bad either.
Yeah, this is fun too. But I love going over to your house and sitting in your garage, super man cave, and I mean you've got all the cool rustic barn wood that you put up, and you've got all these amazing like just amazing signs in there. And those who are listening probably haven't seen that, but tell everybody right now, and this, I'll make my point, but what's hanging on the wall in your garage? You got a lot of them, and why do you have those? And I'll make sense of this in a second.
Oh, man.
You got a lot of lights in there. And
I got a lot of old neon.
Yeah.
Not a lot. I mean, I have some old neon.
Yeah.
Well, one of the biggest reasons I have it is it reminds me of being a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
And my grandparents in Idaho, where I was from then, owned a grocery store, and next door was a bowling alley.
Yeah.
And I used to go to the bowling alley back in the day, everybody's just blazing heaters and rolling. And it was just
that was back in the day.
Smoke. And, but it was all these old neon beer signs. And I just, for some reason, and I even have a few old beer signs from the 50s and 60s that still smell like cigarette smoke.
Yes.
And whereas cigarette smoke drives my wife nuts, I like it.
Yeah.
Because it stirs up memories in me.
It does.
That reminds me of, I'm probably going on a whole different path than you were trying to get me to go on.
This is exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
Exactly. You're making my point. You're making my point.
Okay, good. Because I don't know where you're going, but I'm just telling you honestly why that stuff moves me. And when I flip on my whatever, 10 or 12, 15, whatever, old neon signs in my garage, it warms and it reminds me of, not that now isn't happy, but it reminds me of growing up and being a kid. It makes me happy.
And that's my point. And I knew that. That's why I knew you were going to go there, because
I was trying to predict an answer accordingly.
No, you made my point.
Okay.
When I sit in your garage and I'm looking up, and you're like, Mike, that one reminds me of being in the bowling alley. It reminds me of the smell of the smoke and being there with my dad and my family.
Yeah.
And I can tell like that sign that's hanging in there, to anybody else might be, and I'll use this word, like disgusting, somebody who doesn't like the smell of smoke or whatever, but to you has great value and worth.
Yeah.
Why? Because you have attributed worth to it. That sign did not earn any worth. It's a sign. Why? Why is it not, disgusting or something like that to maybe somebody else who does? Because it has so much worth you've put on it. We are that sign hanging up in the house of Jesus. And we look at ourselves and go, man, I'm disgusting. I have no value. I have no worth. Jesus looks and said, do you know I died for you? You know how valuable you're so valuable that I went to the cross and I died for you. I can't think of any more way to give somebody value. The Bible says no one has any greater love than lays down his life for his brother. Jesus is like, this is how valuable, this is how much worth, you are so worthy and so of worth that you hold, because I have died for you. And so we have to learn as men and women, but men, I just want to speak to you. You have got to stop keeping score and start receiving that Jesus already paid the ultimate score, the ultimate price. He attributes value. This is why we will never walk in our sense of worth if we don't know how to receive the worth without us having to add our own payment on top of that. And that's what I think people do. They look at the payment of Jesus and they're like, that's cool, it's cool. But I got to pay on top of that. I got to pay the tip. Jesus did everything. We don't have to tip it. He paid the full price. And it reminds me of there's one verse in the Bible that a lot of people heard this. Jesus came up out of his baptism, and the heavens opened up, and it said, the Father in heaven said, "This is my son. I'm so proud of him." Just speaking worth over him. Well, later on in the New Testament, it says that when that moment happened, here's the verse. When Jesus came out and the words were spoken over him, words of love and favor, it said in that moment, Jesus received honor and glory. It says he received. So even Jesus knew how to walk in his worth because he knew how to receive it. He listened to the words of his Father. And the words for honor and glory there is the words that we get for purpose and identity. And it said that Jesus had to receive it, but because he did. So I think for a lot of us as dudes, man, the world's going to tear you apart. The world's going to look at you and say, you're a piece of crap. You're a nobody. You're going to hear that from people. You're going to hear that from culture. And that's going to play into that idea of I guess they're right. I guess I am unworthy. And that's a whole other spiritual warfare thing. The lies that we entertain about our unworthiness. But we got to say it's enough that Jesus says, I have worth. And that's where we can rest in that. We got to receive that if we learn. So now we just say thank you.
Right. Without any deflection.
Exactly.
Which always happens, which I'm so bad about, is deflecting. It wasn't that. It was so and so. And I know. I'm terrible about it. I gotta figure that out. And I can sit here and I can call it out in other people, but it's always hard to call out in myself. As far as redemptive, as we start to get to the home stretch here, you were talking about the Bible, and it popped into my head, and it's for people who are followers and believers and who spend any time in the Word. They know who Paul is, and I mean, Paul wrote what 3/4 of the New Testament.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever knew until maybe 10 years ago did I ever look at the stuff Paul did before he had value assigned to him then. But a guy who is literally mocking and trying to destroy the church and destroy believers, committing heinous crimes.
Oh, yeah.
And then turns out to be. And this is why I always love, and some of my closest friends now are people who have been through horrific stories, stuff that they've done to blow their life up. Yeah. And then it seems like those people tend to be the ones who get to the point where I'm talking about. They're the most intentional receivers out there, and they're also fantastic givers. I'm not saying that if you haven't ever been through anything, you're not worthy to do that. Why is that? And when you look at Paul's story, what does that teach people about keeping score and about being a good receiver despite your past?
Yeah. It's funny. Paul's this dude that he starts off in the story of the New Testament as being the Jewish mafia.
Yeah.
Speaking of mafia, I mean, he was the hitman in charge of the hitmen, and his job assignment was to hunt down, chase down the first century Christians and have them killed, women and children. I mean, he was bad dude. And so he had that rap sheet. But then later on, he was also a Jewish Pharisee. And so in their world, he had the resume of being this elite education background. So he had both the rap sheet and he had the resume. And at one point he says, I actually consider that resume crap. I mean, he's like, it's dung, it's garbage, it's trash. And he goes, even my best of my best is never going to be good enough. If all we're here to do is earn our worth, he's like, I could brag. He says that. He goes, I could brag and tell you I'm better than everybody else. But he's like, actually, man, I traded in that resume of all the good things I've done, because whether it's the bad things he did or all the good things he did, he said it can't be about that scorecard. And he says that scorecard, he burned it. He said it's garbage. And he said, I got to learn to just receive by grace. And so he burned both scorecards, both his accounting of the negative things and his accounting of all the positive things.
Yeah.
And you know what? We all know, listen, if you're listening right now, keeping score is a burden. It's a burden. Jesus said, I've not come to put that burden on you. That's a religious burden. Jesus said, I'm not sitting here. Religion says you have to earn your worth. And there's every other religion in the world that says you got to earn it, or God's going to be after you, and God's going to, destroy you if you don't, all that kind of stuff. And Jesus is like, I came to kill religion. I don't want you keeping score.
People don't understand that.
Yeah.
And even friends do that, even when it comes to something simple like gift giving. And when we send out so many Christmas cards, and then we got one from. Do you even know these people? And I'm like, no. And wife's like, well, I'll mail one back. Then I said, you don't necessarily have to. They had joy in sending it, and then I'll have a few friends who will, give sizable gifts, and then it's like, oh, did mine? Can I have that back because I didn't spend what you spent?
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's a good example of this exchange. It is totally keeping score, and it's exhausting.
It is.
Because I'm doing the math in my head, and my dad, when my dad was alive, we always laughed at him because we'd always be kind of unwrapping Christmas gifts, and first question he always asked, which he just kind of said what came to his mind was always, what did this cost? What would something like this cost somebody? And he was always feeling bad that somebody spent money on him. I'm like, yeah, don't ask that. That's not a question that you should ask at this time. But it's always like, he likes it, and then it's like, what would something like this run? And right in front of the whole family, I'm like, don't do that. Because then everybody else is starting to do the math in their head. Did I get him something that was worth? It's kind of funny. But that is a good example, not that, but what I was talking about in the way that I deal with receiving a gift. Did I give something back of equal value?
Yeah. I would say the last thing before we wrap up too is that if you're deciding, instead of learning to receive this thing called grace, which is favor that's undeserved, which means, okay, man, I got to learn to just say, it's not about my scorecard. It's about receiving God's grace. Because when you receive God's grace, it's easy to take that and apply that to our other relationships. Because what will happen is this: if it's all about scorekeeping, it always leads to paranoia. And I don't want to be in relational paranoia where I'm always like, okay, gosh, if I don't measure up and if I don't do this, then I'm going to lose that relationship. When we do that with God, where it's like, okay, if I'm not good today, oh shoot, I just did that one thing. Yeah. And now I'm like keeping score leads to paranoia. It's a sense of, like I said, people walking into church going, I'm going to get struck by lightning. It's God doesn't want us walking in paranoia. Perfect love casts out all fear. And so when we learn to receive God's grace out of his love for us, it just shreds and it erodes all that fear of I've got to keep up or I'm going to lose. That's a paranoia fear thing. So
man, there's your assignment, and there's my assignment too, honestly, is when you are, and there's nothing wrong with being a giver, but I do maintain that it is far easier to give than receive, which is so opposite of what we're taught as kids. And I understand why we teach kids that. You want to be selfish, you want them to learn how to give, but man, you got to be a receiver, and you got to figure out how to do it. And some of these stories that we've talked about, some of these comparisons, dive in and read about it, and just read skills. And we've tried to give you some, but things that you can maintain and build upon to where you can get to that level of being that great receiver so that you're not dishonoring the ultimate giver.
Yep. They always talk about being a gracious giver, but be a gracious receiver. It starts with literally just saying thank you, or one that I've learned to say because it's easier is just thank you. And then on top I'll say, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's just even saying that, acknowledging that. Don't deflect anything or, and just say, thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, really appreciate it. And just the simplicity of that, those words can help translate into our hearts and minds.
And your worth too, because the worth, you do deserve all this, and you deserve everything that, even if it doesn't always make sense, don't steer away from it. Don't let pride be the factor that keeps you from a relationship that ultimately leads to peace, which is what I think we all want. We appreciate you always listening and watching. This is on video as well as audio. I know most people just listen to Vertical Pursuit via Spotify or iTunes or on the Vertical Pursuit app, but it is also a video podcast, which somebody said that, what's the term for that? A vid? Colton, what is it? A vidcast or videocast? Yeah. Okay, there you go. Colton Myers, the newly married man, glowing in the back. But anyway, we thank you for that. And if you haven't watched it, sometimes it helps to take a look at it. It's on YouTube as well. And on the Vertical Pursuit app, you get video along with the audio, but we are on Spotify and iTunes as well. And go to the website, verticalpursuit.org. There you'll find a book that he wrote on Vertical Pursuit. Kind of gives you it's more of a playbook kind of too, right?
That's a great way of saying it.
It's not just a lot of the stuff we talk about, but it does give you some really good instructional stuff and some tips to try and live a better life, as Andy Stanley would say, with a lot fewer regrets. So we'll see you next time on Vertical Pursuit. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast, comment, or message us, and check out our website at verticalpursuit.org. Download the VP app and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.